Well, it looks like we've just rolled over to 12:15, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Karen Westwood. I'm director of the Hennepin County Law Library. Welcome to the special CLE geared in particular to our attorney members and county and court employees for a discussion on how to use the Lexis ebooks. I see some of you are putting in the chat your name for CLE credit. We have received one standard credit for this presentation. And if you are logging in on a computer that shows your name as the login name, Zoom will automatically collect that. If you're logging in on someone else's computer or with a funny nickname or you don't know, feel free to go ahead and put your name in the chat. We hold on to that too as well for reporting purposes. If you do have questions, go ahead and put those in the Q&A section, and Shelley is going to leave a little bit of time at the end for those. I just wanted to remind everyone about our next regularly scheduled programming. Our August 18th CLE will be called A New Leaf, a look at recent cannabis legislation. That's presented by Jen Riza and James Gempeler. And as you know, there were major changes in cannabis law implemented by the legislature this past spring. So that's bound to be a pretty interesting one. And I look forward to seeing you there. But I know all of us, myself included, are really anxious to hear some tips and tricks on how to use the Lexis ebook collection that the Law Library has recently purchased. And so I'm going to turn it over to Shelley Duncan from Lexis, who will give us a brief introduction and kick it off. So thanks, Shelley.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. As Karen mentioned, my name is Shelley Duncan, and I am with LexisNexis as a digital media consultant with the Digital Library. So essentially your ebooks. Your regular rep is Caitlin Forsyth, who covers your account, but Caitlin is out after having the cutest little baby on the planet. So I'm filling in for her today to give you all this introduction to the Digital Library. So just a quick little blurb about me. I've been with Lexis for 18 years. And prior to working on the digital library side, I was a law school rep. So you might have remembered your law school rep from law school who showered you with pens and water bottles and highlighters and pizza. That was my role in Lexis for 15 years, which I really, really enjoyed. But now I've moved over to working with the Digital Library, which is a product I think is fantastic and one that we're just going to see grow more and more as we all got so used to working remotely during that time when it was kind of forced upon us. So this is a great resource for you to have because it does give you that great flexibility of being able to essentially take these books with you no matter where you go. I was just mentioning to everyone, I'm actually in Rocky Mountain National Park right now, and I can research to my heart's content on workers' compensation or labor law or anything else that you want to talk about. So this kind of takes away the need for you to have that physical book in front of you or to have access to your library. So that's what we're going to cover today. Your digital library is actually built on a platform by Overdrive. And if you've used ebooks in undergrad or in law school, or even from your public law library, like providers like Libby, you're probably familiar with this setup. It's a really basic website for you to use, but it does have a few little tips and tricks in there that can make things easier for you. So in addition to kind of giving an overview of the library today, we're going to talk about some of my little favorites that make it even better to work with as we go through. Now, as we are working through our session today, as Karen mentioned, if you do have questions, feel free to put those in the Q&A. I will also provide you with my contact information, and so that way you can get in touch with me while Caitlin is out on her maternity leave. If you find that you're spending a decent amount of time looking for things, trying to figure things out, please just reach out. This is supposed to make your life easier, and I'm supposed to make your life easier. So don't waste your time kind of trying to troubleshoot yourself if you don't want to. You have your fantastic library staff there to help you. And then you also have me as well for any questions that come up. Okay, so now we will actually get started and dive on into the digital library. To access the digital library, I believe Karen gave you all a message in here for how you actually get access to your books. I'm also going to give you a link here. Let me just copy this into the chat. This will give you the URL that you can use. And then also, there is an app that you can use also. This is available for all of your Android devices, also any Apple devices. So if you just type in Lexis Digital Library in your app stores, then that will go ahead and pull that up for you. You will be asked though for a code if you do go through the app. And I'm going to put that code in right now. That code is HC Law Lib. So all smushed together, HC Law Lib. And you'll also see that at the end of the URL when you're using the digital library. So if you can see my address up here, you can see it's right there at the end also. Now this will take you to your digital library homepage here. And very basic page here. You have a search box up at the top. This will allow you to search by title, by author, and by practice area. This is really useful if you're not quite sure what is in the collection and you just want to see what we have in relation to civil procedure, for instance. You can literally just type it here into the search box. It'll pull everything up for you. Then as you scroll down the page, you can see your most recently read titles. And this will actually run on a carousel. So you can scroll over a little bit further. It'll just keep creating more pages for you. So if you're a frequent user and you're looking at a lot of titles all at the same time, then you won't lose those here. You don't run out of space. It'll just keep refilling those for you. So it'll give you the title or the cover page of your book here, and then the information about volume, edition, that type of thing. And we'll talk about how to use this section in just a couple of minutes. Now, if you continue to scroll down, another really big benefit of using the digital library is the fact that you can add highlights and annotations to any of the books here. So that way, if you want to take notes, you want to incorporate anything that you find that's useful, you can include that into these books. I'm pretty sure if you start highlighting Karen's books in the library, she's not going to like that so much. But in this iteration here, you are able to use that feature. And we'll go more into that in depth in that also. There's another feature over here to the right called My Tags. And I personally think this is one of the most underutilized features in the digital library. I absolutely love it. If you're working on a project and you're constantly going to the same books over and over again, you can create a tag for that collection. So for instance, on here, I created a tag for Board of Education hearings. So if I'm working on something for the Board of Education, I can put all of those titles into that tagged collection. So instead of me remembering, okay, I know I was using RAP, or I know I was using this edition of the Minnesota Code regarding education law, I don't have to remember all that. I can put those into tags over here. I absolutely love that feature, and I use it quite frequently when I was doing research more on the regular. Now over to the left, you also now have a menu. So right now we're in the home page. You can get back to the home page at any time by clicking home or clicking on the Hennepin County icon up here at the top. The next menu item you have is Browse Library. And this, just like it says, this allows you to browse your library. So you can see you guys have a nice full collection here. You have almost 800 titles included within your library. And those will all be listed here. And they really do run the gamut of all types of content, all types of practice areas, all of that. Now, if you continue to scroll down, you'll also see that you have some multi-volume sets. So some of the titles will just be one-off books, for instance, while others will have tons of volumes. Think of this as the place where you go on the library shelf and you have Moore's Federal Practice that takes over shelf after shelf after shelf. These are your multi-volume sets. You can view these by clicking View Set, and then I'll show you how to work with these a little bit more going forward also. And then if you continue to scroll all the way down, there's a directory of the subjects that are included in your library. And then also, if you just want to see your full collection, by clicking Full Collection, that's going to list everything out for you. And you can see here, we're starting off with some healthcare materials. You can sort these by title, so that will be alphabetically, or you can also sort by release date. So if you're looking for something that you know was relatively recent, like Art of Advocacy series that was released yesterday, that will go ahead and pop those up there. So that's a nice way if you are looking at the content and you want to see if there's anything recent in a title that you've been looking at. That's one way that you can go about looking at that too. Now back over to our menu. We'll go more in depth in a few of these in a few minutes, but I just want to kind of go through that menu while we're over here looking at it. My Books is going to show you all of the books that you have borrowed, downloaded, or viewed. So in addition to being able to see them in recently read or your annotations, you can also see them over here under My Books. Now, you all have within your library, for many of your titles, a limited number of copies that you can actually view. So that means that right now I've checked out Wrap on Education Law. So that means there's only a certain number of those titles left for other borrowers to use. If you ever find that you are looking at a book and then you'll want to be a good citizen to your fellow man there, you can always go and return this early. Otherwise, it will return on its own. The way that you can do that is by clicking on the clock just to the right of your book. And I've got this until August the 8th. But what that means is if I keep it that whole time, never touch it again, other people can't use it that might be waiting on it. So I can always come here and return this early and go ahead and put it back into the collection for others to select. Also over to the left, you have a section that houses all of your annotations. We'll go into this more in the future, but this will allow you to view those, edit those, and then work with them in case you want to print them, you want to export them to a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet. You can also export them over to Google Drive, and you can just copy and paste them in a Word document. So we'll go through those also. And export queue will have to do with delivering too. So we'll look at that too. My Tags is going to house all of the tags you've created that we talked about a few minutes ago. All right, so we're going to jump now back up to our home page just to start from here. Okay, so you can see here under my recently read, I have the title of the book or the cover of the book there. And then I also underneath this have a read button. These two features will give you the ability to go into a book, but they take you to different places. So just to get started with, we want to think about what is it we want to do. If you were working on an assignment yesterday, you were researching in Larson's, and then you had to run off to a meeting and you just closed the book and walked away. And now you want to start back fresh where you were working yesterday. Clicking on the read button is going to open that book and open it up to the exact point where you last left off. So that's a nice way to kind of use as a placeholder. Now to close my book, I'm just going to click the X so we can go back and see your other option. So your other option is to click on the cover of the book. So I'm going to click on Larson's for our example. And this takes you to the title information page. And there's a ton of stuff that you can do here. So to get started, I'll just kind of work down the page here. So first and foremost is the ability to expand the table of contents. So you can see all of these are underlined. So I can use the arrows to the left and expand that out. And I can keep expanding until I no longer have the arrows over to the left. So I could click here into section 4.01. That's going to open the book to that exact section there. So I really love using the table of contents. I've always done that, especially with treatises. So that's a nice way to get started if you are new to a title and aren't quite sure where you want to get started on your particular issue that you're researching. You also have here under the table of contents a description of the book. So if this is a title maybe you are not super familiar with, this is a nice way to make sure reading in this book is even worth your time, that it is going to cover the information that you're looking for. Next, then you have your details page. So that's really just giving you your ISBN number and who publishes the book. Maybe not completely as important to you in your research as it is to us really focused on the library aspect of things. And then you can also see subjects that are discussed. And you can also see the volumes in this set. So Larson is one of those that's a multi-volume set. There are 17 volumes in this. So currently we clicked to volume 1. So that was the volume that I selected to start with. But you can see from here, you could also get into any of those 17 volumes right from this title page also. And then lastly, in our drop-down menu here, you also can see if there are prior releases of this title. So Larson obviously is updated quite frequently, and you could go back and actually view old releases also. So you can see them listed here. So you would just click on the read button and that would take you into that prior release there. All right. Now, down here, you have the ability to search this title. You can search by phrase, you can search by keywords, but what's really special about a multi-volume set is you have the ability to search the individual volume that you selected, or if you have no idea if your issue is going to be discussed in volume 1 or volume 12, you can also search across all the volumes, so that way you make sure you don't miss anything. So unless I am very, very certain and confident that what I'm looking for is in volume 1, I always select all volumes and then I will put my search terms in here. Now, if you are accustomed to using Lexis online for your research, or even those other guys online for your research, this is not a dynamic search box like you're going to see in your research engines where you're using Boolean connectors. This isn't the time to bust out your within to and not and within same paragraph. This is a simple search box that is provided for the digital library through Overdrive. So just keep that in mind. You want to keep your searches here basic. Depending essay deposition, for instance, subpoena ducis tecum. You want to keep things kind of simple to start with your searching here. And then, as you've seen in tons of other search engines and providers, you will just get a list of results of where your terms actually show up within the title. And you'll see those in order of where they appear. So volume 1 will obviously show up any results before volume 7, for instance. Now over to the left, a few more features that are here. You have information about your edition and release date, all of that for your title. You also have the ability to just click read and open right up into the book. You also have here a link to all of your annotations within this title also. So if I wanted to just get straight to my annotations, I could click this. Your first time using a title, obviously you won't see this because you haven't added any, but as soon as you do, those will be there for you. The copy title link, this is going to give you a specific URL to take you to this book. So you can share this if you're working with someone on a project that you want to share a book with them. You could share that via any of the ways that you share information. And then you also have the ability here is where you would add your tag. So if you don't already have a tag that you're working with, you could just click create new tag, make that whatever you want it to be. And now that will show up on your homepage, and Larson's would be included in that. And then you'll also see here on your title page, anytime you go back to Larson, that you already have created this and made it part of a collection or a tag. Now down towards the bottom here, you also have recommended titles in relation to the topics that are discussed in this particular title or this particular volume, whichever the case may be. And you do also have, if you're ever looking for, you have digital copies of the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Federal Rules of Evidence, and then also the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. So you do have these mini booklet options of those that will give you just the text of all of those. So there's no annotations or editorial content to that. It's just the straight text of those. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of that, I am actually going to just click on read, and we're going to go into our title here. All right, and because I had looked at this book previously, it automatically is going to the page where I left off. So we looked at this just a few minutes ago. If I wanted to get to the very front of the book, if I come down here at the bottom of this menu that's going to let me navigate here, and I click on table of contents, I can come all the way up to the top and quickly get to the very front page. So if you're a person that likes to start at the beginning and kind of flip through to get a feel for a book, or you're looking for the information about the book or the authors, then that's a quick way to be able to get access to that. Once you are in a book, you turn the pages by using your arrow keys. You can go front and back. You can also use your space bar, and you can also use your cursor and just click in the margins, and that'll allow you to turn the pages for you. Now, as we are going through the book, you will see two types of different links within your books. Some will be blue and some will be green. If you see a blue link, 9 times out of 10, that blue link means that's going to take you somewhere within the book. So if we saw a reference to, say, chapter 7, section 3, and it was in blue, by clicking on that, that would jump us to that part of the book. You also, though, will see green links like this. This is going to take you to your Lexis account and ask you to log in. So obviously, if you don't have a Lexis online account, this would take you to a sign-on page that you wouldn't be able to actually log in to view. But if you do have a Lexis account that you are working with online, then clicking this is just going to open up the Lexis page and ask you to sign in here. Mine now may already be signed in. Yes. So just note that that will link out to those materials if you do have that access. The point of the digital library is to work hand in hand with that online service if you have that. If not, you have another way that you could pull up this Haddix case here, for instance. You can always just copy that from whatever provider you're using, or if you're finding it through Google, and you can always make that as an annotation here. And we'll talk about how to do that in just a second. Okay, so let's keep looking at our menu down here at the bottom since we've covered a little bit of this. Remember, the point of this is to make your research faster and easier. So if you are doing a lot of page turning and scrolling and scanning, there's probably a tool that you're forgetting is available to help you really home in on the sections that would be most applicable to you. So getting started down here, you do have the ability to print to an attached printer from your digital library. So to do that, you just click on the print icon. And sorry, when I do this with Zoom, sometimes it makes my font get really large. There we go. So you'll see this is going to be a dialog box, just like if you were using Microsoft Word or any other type of writing program here. You have the ability to print to an attached printer, or you can also save it as a PDF. So whichever option works best for you. You also can choose to customize exactly what it is that you print. This is going to automatically assume that you want to print whatever section that it is that you're viewing. So if I'm in chapter 7, for instance, at the very beginning, it's going to assume that I want to print the entirety of either the first section or the entire chapter, depending on how the title is set up. If it really only, if really all that I need is the first or second page or something like that, I can always change that here under pages, just like you would print with anything else. And I can say, just give me pages 1 to 3, and that will print out just what I need. It'll also show you over here a preview of what pages 1 to 3 actually look like. So you can make sure that you are getting the entirety of what it is that you're looking for there. All right, I'm going to cancel out of that. We looked at this just a second ago, but you also have the ability to view and search your table of contents while you're in the title also. So this will give you, whoops, moved it a little too high there. This is just listing all of those table of contents headings, but I could also search within these too. So let's see here. If I wanted to find everything that mentioned injuries, I can just type that in my search box up at the top, and it'll list all of the sections related, and I could then click into those. I also could print this. So if you were trying to find all of the sections related to a specific issue, and you knew you needed to come back to this later on, or you wanted to keep a record in your file of what you were working on, here are all the sections related to this. I want to come back and look into these. You could always print a list from here too. Next over is similar to your searching the table of contents, only instead of just searching table of contents headings, like the table of contents feature does, this is going to search everything. So this is now finding the word injuries in every table of contents heading, also any footnotes in the text everywhere. So that's going to be a much larger list of results here. And those again will be organized based on where they appear. So starting with volume 1 and working its way through. And just like with your table of contents, you can also print these too. Okay, next over is your annotations. But first, let's talk about how you add an annotation and what that looks like. So you have your highlight button here. By clicking on this, this gives you the ability to see all of the different ways that you can highlight. So if you're a super visual person, you like to identify different issues and different facts in different colors, this will work really, really well for you. It's a feature I use a lot because it helps keep me organized. And we can come here and just select whatever color it is that works for us, and then find the text here that we want to work with. So for instance, I want to highlight this for future reference. So I just drag my cursor and then let go. This now has highlighted all of that text. And if I decide that was the wrong color for that particular issue, I can always change it from in here too. And then I have the ability to add my note. So this can be a note to you of things that you need to do. It can be a note of questions that you have that maybe you're not quite figuring out based on how it fits with the current case at hand. It can also be, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, it could be the case summary for this case that's being referenced here that you copied from Lexis or Westlaw or Google or wherever. So it's really good to add those notes in there to help keep organized as with all of your research. But it's also nice because this note is specifically for you. Even if I share this passage, and then we'll talk about that in a second, they're not going to see my notes. They're just going to get a link to that specific passage. So I have put in here, I have no idea what this is saying. Go back when it's not 3 a.m. So anything there that's going to help just kind of jog your brain of why this was important for you. And I'm going to click done. We're going to come back into this in a second, but I wanted to show you when you add an annotation. So we did our highlight here. Obviously, that's pretty in your face green. But then also notice here this little red piece of paper or mark here. This is telling me that not only did I include or highlight this text, but I also added a note. And then when I hover over any of where this is highlighted, this is going to show me that note. So if I had added in a case summary there, for instance, that would show me a larger snippet of this and would show me that I had added a fair amount of text to this to better understand why this was important. Now, if I want to go back into this annotation, all I have to do is click anywhere in it, and it gives me this dialog box back. A few of the options that you have from here, number one is copy passage link. This will give me a link, just like we saw a few minutes ago, where you could link to a particular book. This is going to give me a link to share with others to this book, to this exact passage. So sharing that link, so you'll see it down here, sharing that would then take them to their digital library. It would open up Larson Volume 1 and would take them to this exact passage. It would not include your notes, so just keep that in mind. Other options within here also, this is of course important because you know if you're going to rely on something, you need to know where it actually came from. So copy with citation is going to copy the passage that you highlighted and then also give you reference back to where this came from within this title. You also can search from here. So you could find particular terminology. You could also define from here. And then if you decide, this really wasn't what I thought it was, I don't need this anymore, you can always delete from here also. Okay, now it is important after you have done highlighting, if you did select the highlight option down here, that you come here and just click on the X by the highlight. So that way, if you are going in, it doesn't continue to highlight in your green color there. Okay, so now that we have some annotations, we know how to add an annotation and highlighting. Now, how can we find those and what can we do with those annotations? So that's going to be your menu option right down here. And this is now going to list for you all of your highlights. So you can see some of them, I have highlighted a lot of text and added a note. Some I might just have done the text within the passage, not offered a note at all. So lots of different options of working within here. But one aspect that I really love is the fact that not only does it show what I highlighted, but it also shows that color coding for me. And it will also spell out the color there too. So here I have a passage I highlighted as a green issue. Here is one as blue. So those are all organized within there too, or identified within there. If you know that within the annotations that you had selected, that there was mention of a particular issue. So I know one that popped up in here is suicide. If I type in that word, it's then going to search my annotations for all of them that actually include that term. So I don't have to remember necessarily that it came from section 7.04. I can just let the system do that searching for me. Another aspect of this that relates to the color coding I really like is that you can also choose to only see annotations from a particular category that you have identified with a color. So for instance, if all I wanted to see was the light blue highlights, I can select just to see those at that time. So again, if you're very much a visual learner and organizer and like to work with that color coding way of looking at your issues, that's a really nice feature to help you really focus in on what's most important to you from your annotations. You also have the ability within here to edit your annotations. So you just click on the pencil, that takes you back to this little same dialog box. So you could add additional information here or And you could change your color coding, or you can always just delete it too. Or back on annotations, you can use the trash can here and just delete an annotation. So if this was important for something you worked on, but now that's done, you're probably not addressing that issue going forward, but you will be using Larson. Sometimes it's a good idea to clean that up so you're not getting bogged down into other issues that aren't at hand for you. Okay. All right. And as we mentioned, as we were getting started, if you do have any questions that come up, please feel free to stick those in the Q&A. And I'll definitely leave some time. I think we have about 25 minutes left, so I'll definitely leave 5 or 10 minutes at the end for us to talk about any of those questions that come up too. Okay, so one more thing that I do want to draw your attention to here before we close out of this book and move forward is your settings options. And for me, in addition to being able to read this on the go anywhere that you go, the ability to mark up these books, this is one that I think is extremely beneficial coming from the digital library, and that's the ability to manipulate your settings. This is very similar to, excuse me, if you read on the Kindle app, your iPad, or any of that, you all know, or at least I do, as it gets later in the day, it gets harder and harder for me to read whatever it is I'm looking at. Sometimes I need to change my background. Sometimes the lighting is a little darker and the regular lighting like we're looking at right now is too bright. I need to darken it up to kind of fit the room just a little bit. You can make those changes here, just like you can with other reading apps. You also have the ability to change that text scale. You can change your font. So lots of different ways that you can customize this so it's working best for you and how you read and process and learn this material. One that I really truly think is a feather in our cap with this one is also under book appearance. One of the options here is to change the book appearance to Open Dyslexic. And what that does is it changes your font of your book so that the text is not as symmetrical, it's a little bit bigger, and that can make it easier for some people if they have processing challenges reading. That can make it easier for some people to read. So if that is something that's useful to you, feel free to check it out. It may just be that this font's easier for you personally. So I really just love the fact that it's not a one size fits all like a hardbound book is. So if that is something that makes things more challenging for you, that you're not a Times New Roman person and a book happens to be in that, this is a nice way that you can adapt that book to work better for you. To go back to your settings here, if we just scroll here and I go back to Publisher's Default, that will then take my book back to what it first looked like when we got started. Now, up in your top right-hand corner of your book, you also have a few options here, one of which is your bookmarks. That's really the one that I wanted to point out for you. If this is a page that you know you would like to get back to at some point, you can always bookmark it just like you could on a page in a regular book also. And then to close our book, we just use the X in the top left-hand corner, and that will take us back to the title page for our book here. Okay, so now, as we have gone through and we have searched our book, we have gone in and highlighted, we've done a lot with these books. We've learned how to share passages, share books, all of that. So now a few more, a little bit more advanced features that are here within your digital library also. One of which is going to be a newer feature to the library. So Larson, for instance, we know has prior releases. And it may be that you have gone in and done annotations in a prior release. So for instance, here in release 115 from 2015, we can see that we have added annotations. Well, that's lovely, But what if I want those annotations in the more current release of Larson? Because that's the one I'm working from. That's the most current. But those notes that I had back in 2015's version might be useful also. If I come over here in my menu to the left, remember we have our annotations listed there. If I click my annotations, that now shows me all of the books within my collection that I have added annotations to. So if I want to see those, I can just come here and click View Annotations. This now gives me a list of all of the annotations that I have added to Larson. Now that's going to be Larson across this particular volume. Okay, so those annotations are now going to be listed here. They will be color coded for me. If I expand down, it'll show me the text that I highlighted, any note that I added, and then where it came from. So if I wanted to go back into Larson to exactly where this passage came from, if I click here where it says what's new, that's the actual section within the book, that'll open the book to that exact place. And then it's going to tell me what release it's from, the date of that, and then when the last time it was that it was updated. So this is something that we just added a few minutes ago. Now from my actions here, I can copy these to a clipboard. I can also export them. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then there's also the option to find this in the latest release. Now this came from the most current release, but that's not always the case. So if I wanted to see all of the notes that I had from this, but I want to make sure any that are in an old release move over to the 2023 release. I come up to the top where it says Title Actions and click on the 3 dots. Within here, I've got a bunch of options that I can work with. Look at the table of contents. I can just go straight in and read. But one of them is copy annotations to latest release. So if I click on that, this is going to give me all of the releases that I have annotations within that aren't the current release. So if I had annotations from 2015, 2017, 2019, those would all be listed in this dropdown for me. So I'm going to select 2015. So I now have 3 annotations here that are now going to copy to the most recent release. So your only option is to copy to the most current release. You couldn't copy from 2015 to 2019, for instance. So automatically is going to populate that. So I have 3 that are moving over, and then click Copy Annotations. You're going to get this message here that says copying annotations. If you're copying a lot, a nice large batch of annotations from a release to another one, that can take some time. So you may see that message for a minute or so. This one was very, very few, just 3. So it did it quite quickly. When it's done, it'll say copying complete. And then over here, you can click review. That now is going to show me that I had 3 annotations successfully copied. If I want to see those, I can just click here, and that is then going to list all of them for me. Again, with all of that same information from before. So it takes your notes, it takes the highlighting, it even takes the highlighting color. So all of that is going to be included for you. But notice here, you also got this message right here. So this is telling you of the 3 that we tried to copy over, none of them failed. They were all successful. Now, what can cause an annotation copy to fail is if there is a significant change from the 2015 version to the 2023 version. So if a section is completely removed, then that copy will fail because the system has no idea where to put it because that section no longer exists in 2023. You also, if there is significant changes to text. So if something is not just adjusted a bit, it's completely reworked, reworded, revamped. Those can fail also. So that then would give you the information about what failed. So then you could go into that particular annotation manually to see, is this something that is still applicable in 2023 that I need to be focused on? Or is this something where the law has changed so significantly that this really isn't relevant anymore? So that's just going to give you kind of a heads up that that could be the case there. Now, if I click on my annotations again, and now I go in and look at my Larson annotations here, you will see that all of those have been added here. Now, because I've done this a couple of times with the same annotations, our numbers don't exactly match up because I've repeated some of these, but normally that's what you will see. So whatever the number was that you moved over, the number you already had, that's how many annotations are now in that particular title there. So we have all these annotations, which is fantastic. However, if you are doing your research and keeping your notes in a Google Drive, or you're keeping them in Excel or Microsoft Word, it's great that you have this information. However, you now have multiple places where your research is, which is not remotely ideal. So there's a couple of things that you can do with the information that's in your digital library. One is the most basic of basic, and I hate to admit it, but I still love this one all the time. I use it all the time. I can use the checkboxes to select which highlights and passages are important to me, or I can just use the checkbox up at the top to select everything and then come up here to actions. The first option is copy to clipboard. I can copy this, I can go into Word and I can paste it in. It's going to include all of the information. So the highlighted passage wording, it's also going to include my note. It's also going to include the citation of where this came from. So it's a really nice way of keeping everything organized, so you're not at the 11th hour saying, oh my gosh, this is the money passage, but I have no idea where it came from. So I've got to figure out where it came from. This is a nice way to keep that organized from the get-go. Another option that you have does the same similar functionality, but it gives you more options. Copy to clipboard, you can only copy to whatever places. So another word processing program or whatever it is that you're using, or an email, for instance. But you also have the option to add to the export queue. So this one takes an added little step. So you'll notice here at the bottom, it gave me a message saying added 11 annotations. Now, if you look at your menu over here to the left, notice that your export queue menu option has now changed. It now has the number 11 to it. And that's because you have now taken these 11 annotations and you've pushed them over to the export queue. They're still here, but they're also over here. Now, I can use this same thing, use my checkbox that selects all 11 passages, and now I can select to export. This will let me export to a Google Drive, into a PDF, and also into a CSV spreadsheet. Now, I will say that out of all of these, I probably use the Google Drive and the Excel spreadsheet the most. PDF is nice if you're looking for something pretty to put all of your work into. But just keep in mind that if you don't have the ability to edit PDFs, you're kind of stuck with what you copied over or exported over. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you're able to edit PDFs, that's great. That'll work well for you too. I do like the Excel spreadsheet option because it helps with keeping organized. It's a nice visual spreadsheet. If any of you have ever used CaseMap in the past, it's very reminiscent of that for keeping your information organized too. So once you have done that, the next step is you don't want to leave those 11 annotations in your queue, because you may finish with this project and then move on to a totally different project that's unrelated to all of this. And you don't want to mix your annotations together. So the way that you do that is just click where it says remove from queue next to the little trash can. Don't let the trash can make you panic. That's just taking it out of the queue, but it is still back here in your annotations. One really nice aspect about using the export queue is, let's say that you wanted to include annotations from Larson's, but then you also wanted to include annotations from other sources also. You can combine all of the annotations from those different titles and put them all into the same export session and then put them into the Excel spreadsheet at the same time. So you wouldn't have to wait to do that. The easiest way to do that is just view annotations for a particular title, select them, click actions and go to add to export queue. And then just go back to your annotations. Those 11 are going to stay there. So now we could do the same in another title, exact same thing. And so now instead of 11, we have 12 annotations here coming from 2 different sources. So that's just one way that you can, if you do want to blend what you're getting from multiple sources before you export it, that's really easy to do. Okay, and then just really quickly, as we are wrapping up again, just to get back to our home one more time, up in the top right corner, you'll see references to my account. This is going to let you know your borrowing limits for one thing. So I have borrowed one of 3, think of them as restricted titles. So titles that there are limited numbers of copies for. And I am limited to borrowing 3 at a time. So this shows me that I have 2 remaining. If ever you go to borrow a title, let's see, I'll try to pull one, let's see. Let me try with volume 2 here. When I go to check out a book, if it is a book that has those limited copies, I'm going to get this message here. So the first thing that it's going to tell me is there's one available copy of Education Law here, and I can borrow it for 7, 14, or 21 days. So I can always adjust that if need be. And then that also is going to remind me how much more I can borrow at this time. So now if I click on borrow, so I've added another volume of wrap there. And if I then come up to, it's going to check it out for me. And then now if I come up here, it's showing me this is updated. I've only got 1 book left. But remember that if I realize I don't need volume 1 of wrap anymore, I can always come over to my books and I can always check that one back in. So my books on the menu to the left, remember to look for the little clock, and now I can turn that back in. The nice thing is if I now go and realize that I need that title again, if it's not available, I can always place a hold on it. So then that way, when it does become available, I can get it as soon as it's available. I'll be notified of that. But also, if I now go into and check it out again 3 months from now, my annotations and my highlighting are all still going to be there. So just because you run out of your borrow time doesn't mean that you lose all of that work and effort that you put in there. That will still be there, that information. And then also here, just a few options, your cookie settings. If you ever have challenges with getting logged in, if you're getting a page where it's just kind of staying static, or you're clicking on the read button, but it's not reading, sometimes that's just a cookie refresh that needs to happen. And obviously, if you need help with that, that's something you can reach out to me or reach out to your librarians on also. So along that same line, that concludes my presentation. So if you do have any questions that come up, please do put that in the Q&A. I'm going to also include my information in the chat so you can get in touch with me anytime that you have questions about using the digital library, logging in, or anything that comes up for you. And I also did include your login as well. So I'll just give you a couple minutes in case you have questions.
Kelly, are you able to see the question?
Yes, I just saw Galen's question. Annotation notes. Okay, so the question is going back to, let's see, going back to the example where annotation and notes are stored for an earlier volume. Is this information stored on the Lexis system until I return, or is it deleted when signing out? I'm trying to understand whether this is information which could include confidential notes regarding a particular file could be accessed by third parties. So it is housed on the Overdrive system. So it's going to stay in those prior releases. I believe yes, earlier volume. The information is stored within Lexis's library on Overdrive. No one is accessing that, but I certainly wouldn't put confidential information in there that you would be concerned about. I can tell you no one is accessing it. I can't access it. All of this is user-based. So your notes, annotations, all of that is keyed to your account and only visible through your account. But again, for the side of err on the side of being cautious here, I would say do not put confidential information in those notes. Any other questions?
There is one that just popped into the chat.
Okay. Not annotating the library's version. So, okay, the question was, how do I make sure I'm not annotating the library's version of the document? You can't do that because when you log in, you're logging in on your login information, which means you're only working with your version of that or your copy of that. So even if it's a limited number copy, so there's volume 1 of education law, any notes that you add are only making those notes to the version that you see. You couldn't make annotations to the library's version. It's not like a shared document where people could make notes all to it and then all the notes combined together. So yours is individual. That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that before. That's a really good one, Karen. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, I will stay on just in case anyone has additional questions that they want to ask. But again, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you, Karen and Allie and Patricia, for setting this up. And again, like I said at the beginning, just please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. We're here for you to make this as easy as possible to work with. And we're excited to have you on board. So look forward to it. And most importantly, happy Friday. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you, Shelley. And I just wanted to let everyone know, if you have any issues logging into your account, feel free to email or call the Hennepin County Law Library. We're here to help you guys. So just let us know as well, and we can help you.
Oh, I did just get another
question.
Oh, go ahead. So Karen, there's a question about a list of included books and treatises. Is that something that you all provide?
So Karen, our library director, is on our reference desk at the moment, so she hopped off.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But I don't think we have a list of the books and treatises specifically, but we do all of our books. There's in our catalog, there's both the physical copies of the books and an electronic version, which generally in the catalog, it has a link to the digital library. So you can access through our catalog, or you can access from our website. There's a link on our website in the just on the homepage and under popular links, there is the LexisNexis Digital Library eBooks, and that'll take you to the library. And it has a list of a few titles that's included, but it doesn't have the extensive list of everything. So I hope that sort of answers that.
And then Allie, there was a question also about logging in to their digital library. So I can provide in the chat the link, the direct link to the URL. But as far as ID information, do you have that information?
Yeah, so it should be each person has their own login, and it's generally your first name dot last name. And then if you haven't changed your password in our catalog, it's the last 4 digits of your library code. Generally, if you have logged into your account, you might have changed your password to your own specifications. So it just sort of depends on what that is. We can always reset if you have trouble with the password or can't remember it. So always feel free to reach out to the library and we can help people troubleshoot that. But when you do log in, it asks what library to log into, and it's that public access. And then in your username, it's first name dot last name, and then your password for your account below there.
Okay, it looks like we've reached our time.
All right, well, again, feel free to reach out to the library or Shelley directly, but thank you so much and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.